Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark and I'm a professional VFX artist and upcoming writer and director. In the past, I worked for many high-end clients, for example, Netflix, Apple TV, HBO Max, Warner Brothers, and many more. In this video, I wanted to showcase how you can take your footage and transform it to something a lot more cinematic with one very good visual effects technique. Before we properly begin the video, I would like to thank Film for sponsoring this video. As a narrative filmmaker, I want to have complete control over how the final film looks. And the one technique that gives you infinite control and flexibility is the use of set extensions. We actually talked about set extensions in a previous video, which actually did very well. And thank you so much for anyone who viewed that video. If you're interested in watching that, you can watch it like, I believe here, or it might be there. I'm not sure. One of those corners is going to be there. Set extensions are very often used in high budget films, and a very good example of a director using set extensions incredibly well is David Fincher. Just look at some shots from the Zodiac and you can see how well the VFX team have extended the sets. Here's the thing though, set extensions are incredibly useful when you don't have a budget. In a way, it's even more useful because you don't really have the budget to do any set dressing or anything like that. So in this video, I'm going to break down how the set was extended for the wide shot you saw with the car. By the way, if you're interested in learning how you can do set extensions, please consider checking out my Patreon and subscribing if you like it. I have been extremely busy with preparing for a short film I'm directing in Hungary in 2 weeks. From now it's 2 weeks, I'm not sure, it's probably going to be a week when I upload this video. So I haven't been uploading to Patreon that much, but in the coming months I'm going to upload quite a few videos that talks about green screens and set extensions, and also going to have a tutorial for the shot you saw in the beginning, the wide shot. I already started creating the 3D environment before we even got to filming the shots. And this is very important because you want to make sure that the live action plate you're shooting roughly matches the 3D environment you have. So the wide shot was shot in a car park of a national park in England. The ground is somewhat similar to what we have in 3D, but it's more asphalt or concrete. So it's not the best match. We could have found somewhere probably that's a bit more accurate, but it turned out pretty good. So in this time world, but it's always best to find something that's very, very similar. Or you can also build a small practical set that then you can use to shoot with. Once we got to set and started shooting the plates, I realized that the trees were quite a bit further away from the road than I thought it was. So the lighting is quite top heavy. This isn't really what I had in mind originally. However, what's great about using set extensions, and especially doing the whole scene in 3D, is that you can still change the lighting in the 3D environment, so you can really match accurately what the lighting is in the original plate. The mid close-up didn't require any visual effects work, so that's actually just the plate we got on set. The lighting for that shot was a large soft directional light that's coming in from the other side of the camera, so from the side of her, and it just gives us a really nice backlighting on the edge of the actress, which is actually my mom, by the way. Unfortunately, the condensation was harder to get because we had to open the door for me to get the shot I wanted, because I wanted to use the 85mm lens. So we had to constantly breathe onto the window to have the condensation on the window. For next time, I would probably bring like a hairdryer or something to just quickly be able to do it, but in this case it worked. It does gradually disappear, which isn't what I intended, but it's not too bad. So before jumping into Cinema 4D, I need to completely roto the car and the shadows. It didn't take that long as I used the built-in mocha in After Effects, where you can track certain parts of the image, and that just makes rotoscoping a bit faster. I also went ahead and stabilized the footage so it seems like it's a locked off shot, although we will come back to this because I actually made an error. Let's jump into Cinema 4D to see how the 3D scene is set up. Alright, so this is just an overview of the entire project, but the project file will be available on my Patreon. The link is in the description. Let's begin with the grounds. There are 7 different grounds actually. There are 4 that are the actual road, and there are 3 background low-res grounds. For the ground that is the closest to the camera, I applied 8K textures, so this part has quite a lot of detail. There are 2 displacers for each ground. The bottom one is called global, and basically this one just applies to the entire object. Then we have the forest areas, which are placed specifically on the sides to create a sort of higher ground dirt/forest area. So there are a few textures in play to make the ground work. The main one, which you can see in the middle, basically this texture is contained in between the box fields that are raising the ground on the sides. I created a vertex map and painted the forest areas, and this allows you to quickly create masks to use in the material editor. I also added a shader field and generated a noise in the shader field. And to apply this only to the edges, I changed the blending mode to overlay. This makes the edges of the vertex paint a bit more random, which looks more realistic to me than if it was just a straight line. This is the same for all of the grounds that are in the middle. I basically did not do much to the background grounds, they just have an overall forest texture applied to them. Let's look at the matrix object next. You see all of those dots appear in the viewport. Each of those points represent a particular 3D object. There are quite a few different matrix objects such as grass, trees, bushes, wood avens, which are the yellow flowers, branches, and lastly tall grass. If I zoom out, you can see that I usually store these elements just outside the scene. It just makes it easier to quickly grab one if I need it. I actually bought some really cool trees from CG Trader. They are actually maple trees. Shout out to the creator of these assets, they are really good. The link is going to be in the description. Moving on, I always add some custom placed 3D objects to add detail where I feel like it should have more. This is purely just trial and error. Then we have the cabin in the distance. I also bought this from CG Trader, and again a very good 3D model. Although I would only use it for background pieces as it's not quite detailed. You do always have the option to retexture it yourself though, or just improve the existing textures. Then I added a contained fog to the scene. I usually use the Redshift environment, which kind of globally applies fog to the entire scene, but it was fun trying to add something similar to what Blender has. It just gives you more flexibility, but also it's quite slow to render. Then let me turn on the footage, which is once again just a plane. This is animated in the scene to move forward and sort of matches the speed etc. to the source footage. Lastly, let me show you the lighting setup. We have a HDR map that I got from Polyhaven. This gives us the initial ambient light for the scene. So to match the lighting to the source footage, I added two long area lights. One is specifically for the foreground and one is for the background area. I added one more light to illuminate the cabin a bit more to match the lighting again. And lastly, there are 3 red point lights that are animated to turn on as the brake light turns on. Alright, so that's it for the 3D scene. Let's move on to the compositing process, which is actually kind of quick. Alright, so there were a couple of issues with the render, but I cannot re-render it because it took so long to render. I did a test render initially, but it was so noisy I didn't see these errors. But I thought it would be a good idea to show that these things happen and there is always a solution. So what are the issues with the render? First of all, when I stabilized the shot, I didn't realize how shaky the car got, if that makes sense. Let me zoom in to show you. I should have used a different stabilizing method, possibly mockup, but everything was moving so quickly on this project, I didn't really have time. So to fix that, I basically stabilized the footage to the license plate. By the way, this is not the actual license plate for the car. I changed the numbers on them. After stabilizing, I just sort of manually animated the layer to be in frame. This sort of fixes this issue, but it's not ideal, so definitely always check before you commit to such a long render. The second issue that happened, and I only realized after rendering half of the shot, is that there are issues with the alpha of the footage layer in Cinema 4D. So there is a line in between where the shadows in the footage end and the shadows that are casted onto the ground. It's a really quick fix, to be honest. I just roughly manually track the line and then rotoscope the area where the shadow was missing, then just fill it in with a solid. However, the grain is currently missing, so it looks off. So I duplicate the Cinema 4D expert and then duplicate it again, then denoise the top layer and set the blending mode for this to be subtract. If I increase the exposure in the viewport, you can see the grain remains. Then I use this as the noise source layer for the match grain effect. Slightly tweak it, but it looks pretty good to me. I also just applied a very subtle color correction, but basically just balancing out the colors. Alright, so usually in previous videos you saw me apply film convert as the top adjustment layer and grade the shot within After Effects. But in this case we will do it in Davinci Resolve. So I render this out as Arri log C. I can do this by the way because I am working in ACES and this allows you to output your export in pretty much any color space. But with the shot rendered, let's move on to Davinci Resolve. So this is the clip without any of the nodes. As you saw earlier, this was exported in Arri log C. I thought it would be best to just go through each node and talk about what they do. So on the first node, I just sort of balanced the shadows and highlights. In the process, I found that green/blue in those areas looked really nice. I'm literally just using the curve adjustment on this node. On the second node, I only made a subtle S-curve to bring the highlights up and also subtly bring up the shadows as well. I'll jump to the last node for now because you will notice the effect of the third node much better once film convert is applied. So I chose the Alexa Mini Log C as the camera profile. I slightly increased the exposure, then played around with the temperature and tint. As you can see, I lean towards the green even more with the tint. My favorite film stock to use is KDP400 PTRA. The only adjustment to this is that I reduced the Cineon to print film to 75%. I decreased the grain strength to 50%. There is already noise in the clip, otherwise I sometimes leave that even higher. I absolutely love grain, and that's how Film Convert was used to achieve the grade. However, they gave me a license for hazy and I instantly fell in love. Let me turn on the third node as well. You can instantly notice, and in my opinion it adds so much. It basically diffuses the highlight areas, and as you can see, for the filter style I am using Black Pro Mist, which is an adapter for lenses. I have set the camera profile to Blackmagic Design's Film Gen 5 color space, and I was just playing around with the Arri Log C free camera profile, but eventually landed on this profile because it just instantly gave me the right results. There are many other filters included like bloom, diffusion, haze, but I just love how the Black Pro Mist just softens the image, especially that this is mostly computer generated. It really benefits from it. Lastly, I have increased the filter strength to quarter, but that's the grade for the shot using Film Convert.